So good morning, everybody. I'm Roseanne Bump. I'm the Executive Director with FEI Twin Cities. It's great to see everybody here this morning. Our session today is Challenges of the CFO. So we have two sessions this morning. One is at 8 a.m., which we're going to start here in just a minute. And that's going to be lessons learned from a lifetime in business, including a pandemic. And then also a session immediately following this, which is Demystify Emerging Tech and Create an Adoption Culture. It is the same link for both of those. So if you are already signed in, you are set for both of those. Both sessions do offer CPE credits. So today's webinar is worth 1 continuing professional education credit for each session. And then to be eligible, you need to answer 3 of the 4 polling questions for each session and need to be on for a total time of at least 50 minutes for each session. CPE will be available 7 to 10 business days after the webinar, and we are unable to grant CPE credits in cases where technical difficulties preclude eligibility. I want to mention a couple other items too. So we have another 2 sessions of our Challenges of the CFO series on Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Cressa is going to do a topic on real estate hot topics and actionable advice. And at 9 o'clock is a Be a Hero to Your Company presented by eCapital, and it's going to be on data analytics. And then we have our 8th annual Capital Markets and M&A Update series coming up. So this starts Monday and Wednesday of next week, and then Monday and Wednesday of the following week. We have 4 sessions. Let's Talk SPAC, Capital Markets and M&A Update, Beyond the Numbers and M&A Transactions, a Culture and People session, and then recent developments and reps and warranties insurance and other considerations. So we hope you'll join us for those. One thing I would love for everybody to come to is our golf outing on June 21st. It's going to be at the beautiful North Oaks Golf Club. We do have spaces available for that, so we hope you'll join us. And then I'm going to go ahead and kick off our session today. So I'm going to introduce Karen Melby. She's the Managing Director, Midwest Region for StevenDouglas. Karen.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces and see some new faces as well. Thank you, Roseanne, for the opportunity to present to FEI. Before we start, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleagues. Headquartered in South Florida, StevenDouglas is a leading boutique search and interim resources firm. Since its founding 37 years ago, we have grown to 19 offices throughout the US, Latin America, and Canada. I'm Karen Melby. I opened the Minneapolis office 14 years ago and have primarily focused on the interim resources division, in which we provide experienced talent to our clients on a project or interim basis in finance, accounting, IT, and HR. We recently added a director of search, so now we have both divisions in Minneapolis. I'm pleased to introduce our chairman and CEO, Steve Sadaka, who started our firm in 1984 after gaining experience in public accounting and seeing a need for highly qualified talent in the region. As well as founding the firm, Steve runs the financial services practice, which focuses on wealth management, single family and multifamily offices, commercial banking, and hedge funds. As CEO, Steve's commitment to his staff is that they look forward to coming to work every day and make more money than they have ever made. This has produced a culture that is supportive and encouraging and has resulted in one of the highest average employee tenures in the industry. Steve graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in accounting and began his career in the audit practice of PwC. I'm also pleased to introduce our president, Matt Shore, who joined StevenDouglas in 2006 and has played an integral role in the company's significant growth with a focus on maintaining our great culture and boutique approach. Under Matt's leadership, StevenDouglas has received various honors, most notably achieving 5 consecutive years of Inc. magazine's fastest growing private companies. As president, Matt oversees the firm operations for both the search and the interim resources divisions. During his time with StevenDouglas, the firm has reached major milestones, including exceeding 60 million in revenue, opening multiple offices across America and expanding the team and footprints in key markets. Prior to joining StevenDouglas, Matt spent 10 years in progressive leadership roles for a national recruiting firm where he ran the professional services division throughout Florida. He also worked in audit at PwC. Matt received his Bachelor's of Science in Accounting and Master's of Accounting degree from the University of Florida. So we have 2 University of Florida alums, and has a CPA. Just before we start.
All right, I just had to.
Okay. We'll do questions at the end of the discussion, so feel free to submit your questions to the chat box and then we'll go through those after our discussion. So before we start, I thought we could ask a fun question. Steve and Matt, what is the one new habit you have developed during COVID? Steve, you want to go first?
The one new habit?
Yes.
That's the question you were about to ask. I was prepared
Yes.
for the other question. One new
Okay.
habit.
I could start.
Matt, you go on that one.
So mine's actually the opposite. It's a habit that I quit. I thought about this. So I stopped watching the news after work in the evenings. I also got rid of social media other than LinkedIn for business. I shared with our team along the way during all this crazy unrest that the world's been going through that social media and especially the news are like an all-you-can-eat 24-hour buffet. Like, the more you eat, the sicker you're going to feel. And I decided I wasn't sleeping that well at night by watching the news at night. So I actually kicked that habit, and I slept a lot better.
No, that's really good. And as CEO, I think it's important to keep my confidence up. And adding to Matt, when I was listening to the news, I found myself in a hunkered down mode, and I didn't think that was a powerful place to be leading the firm through a pandemic. So one, I did that. The other thing is we started overly communicating. So our leadership team would meet once a quarter. And during COVID, we met twice a week because it was just changing every day. And the other thing is that Matt added is he was sending detailed emails every night to our employees, really reassuring them. A lot of the millennials who work for us never went through a downturn, and they were listening to the news and the world was falling apart, and we had to give some balance to that. And we really overly communicated. It's interesting. We still now meet once a week, the leadership team, we put that in. But I would say just the ongoing communication to the staff was a new habit.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, you started StevenDouglas in 1984 and have been through 4 major economic downturns. So this is a 2-part question. First, and you did start to talk about it just a little bit ago, describe your experiences leading through these types of crises. And then what did you learn from prior recessions that influenced and helped us get through COVID?
Great. That was the question I was prepared for, Karen. So, I started StevenDouglas in 1984, and we were on Brickell, and most of my clients were banks. So we went through one major recession in 91 where all my clients got taken over by the RTC. Then 2001, 70% of the IT search firms went out of business. 08, 09 obviously was very traumatic, and now we have the pandemic. And I run the family office division, so I place chief investment officers. So I thought I was actually getting good advice from these chief investment officers of billion-dollar families on how to manage my money. Because as the CEO of a privately held company, my role was to keep everything stable during downturns. So in 09, I had a lot of my money in absolute return hedge funds, which I found out were not absolute. I absolutely lost money. And secondly, I couldn't get my money out of it. So, we were in a downturn in 09 that pretty much lasted 18 months. And I didn't have access to funds that I thought I was going to have. And I really took from that. And I know you guys, CFOs, this is obvious, but it's like, just to let you know, by the way, what Karen did not mention is my illustrious career at Pricewaterhouse lasted a solid 4 months. And I quit about 5 minutes before they were going to fire me, which is sort of hard when the first month's training. So I just want to give you an idea. I'm not very facile with numbers anymore. But what I learned is you have to have liquidity. So I've been telling my staff for the last 4 years, we've been in good times the last 4 years before the pandemic on recruiting. It was like, this is not going to last. You guys need to start saving your money to handle a downturn. Now, we didn't know if we were just going to hit a wall, the middle of March, but I was prepared with cash, with lines of credit. So when this pandemic came, I was not as concerned as I was in 08 or 09 because I didn't know what was going on in 08 or 09, and I didn't feel comfortable with my balance sheet. So The second week, so we hit the wall. We were down 80% last year on the recruiting side. Our clients literally stopped hiring. They didn't know where their offices were going to be. Everything came to a halt. And I knew I was financially okay. And I knew I was probably going to have to put a couple of $1 million in the company to keep everything stable. So I went to my staff the third week of March and I said, listen, no one's getting cut. No one's salary's getting cut. No one's getting furloughed. Okay, I'm going to keep everything stable. And we did, by the way. Now, we were lucky that in April, we got some PPP money, but I wasn't counting on that. And one of the big lessons, another lesson I learned is in 91, when all my banks got taken over, there were companies that were taking advantage of that. So the lesson I learned in recessions is some companies are still doing well in a recession. So Kislak Mortgage was buying up all the loan servicing rights of all the banks that got taken over. And it was a flood of work all during 91 in the recession. And we actually had a great year. So my point is, someone's always doing well during a recession. And I needed my sales staff to keep selling and prospecting. So every meeting, I was letting our staff know the firm's stable, your job's stable. Do not worry about the firm. Do not worry about the job. I need you out selling. Because if they think the world's coming to an end, it's like, why even bother? They're not going to make the phone calls. They're going to get discouraged. They're going to get resigned. So one of the biggest roles I felt is encouraging people to still stay in action and selling. And in 2008, we were down 35%. We ended up just down 12% last year, which really I'm very proud of. So I think that's a good start, Karen, on some of the lessons. You know, someone's always doing well. Oh, I got one last one. This is a good one. Recessions do end at some point. Okay, they do end. Downturns do end. So I'm really proud of this one. So in June, and I always regretted not taking advantage of the dips during recessions. So in 2010, I beat myself up, or no, 2014. Why didn't I buy real estate in 2010? Why didn't I double down on the stock market? And so I said, I'm not going to regret it this time. So my view was there was going to be talent available to join our firm, recruiters from our competitors who were private equity backed, publicly traded, who had to cut expenses, who had to shut down offices, or who started micromanaging the firm in such a way that they created a toxic environment. A lot of companies don't know how to manage during a recession. They just start cutting expenses and managing costs, and it ruins the culture. So in June of this year, in the middle of the recession, I told my leadership team, there's going to be good people available. Let's keep our eyes open. Let's take advantage of it. Now, it did help that I had some PPP money, so that did alleviate it a little bit. But Matt, have we hired 25 or 27 new recruiters since something like that, since June, and we're still hiring people. So, you know, so those are the three things, Karen, that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Steve. Matt, I think as with Steve, this is not the first time you've been through an economic downturn. And if you could describe your experiences leading through these types of crises. And then again, as with Steve, what did you learn from previous economic downturns that influenced and helped you get through COVID?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I'll add on to a lot of what Steve already talked about. You know, my first run at a recession was actually running a region for a Fortune company, which was a very different experience because it was a publicly traded company. And you know, how do you lead through these types of situations? The last two recessions, being that I've been with Steve for 15 years, I think we did it the right way, other than the way we were forced to do it in the prior environment. So I mean, as I think about just what to do in you know, when you're running into these, you know, massive, scary types of situations where it feels like the world's coming to an end. you really have to be kind of a steady hand, and not avoid the knee-jerk type reactions. I think that a lot of companies tend to react really quickly and make short-term decisions that they regret later. Steve and I really grounded each other. And by the way, there were scary mornings. There were drives in where we had to kind of lift each other up. And some days it was me, some days it was him. But the staff never saw that, right? We made sure that everybody felt safe, and that they all knew their jobs were safe. It was really empowering to hear every Monday Steve repeat himself that nobody's losing their jobs. Okay. And I kept telling everyone, we need you to focus on taking care of each other, taking care of your clients, and taking care of your candidates. Okay. We'll worry about the company's financial health. Your job is safe. That's a really empowering thing for people to come in the morning and really be focused. And then I also told them, and if you can't handle the news, don't read it or listen to it before work if it's going to disempower you and you're going to lose confidence. So we felt like our job as a leadership team was really to keep people's confidence up, that there was opportunity out there. There were ways to make money. There were ways to keep things going. And, Steve alluded to, kind of the over communication that we did. I did those memos. I called them the COVID Chronicles. And for literally 6 days a week for 10 weeks. So I wrote 60 of these. At 7 a.m., I'd work out at 5, and at 7 a.m., I would start writing. And I'd write something inspirational, something to keep people focused on the prize. But I also was putting not only just words of encouragement, but I was also putting in actions that they could take, ideas that they might not have thought of, something I heard about in another region of the company that was actually working, industries that we identified they're actually hiring, right? And so it was actionable items to say, hey, here's 4 or 5 industries are actually doing well right now. If there's any companies in your region or your area, just these are some focus areas. And hey, here's the positions that are still being hired that you might want to focus on. And so I felt like we wanted to keep a proactive attitude, keep people's confidence up, but mostly I think keep them feeling safe. The other thing was we didn't want to let our culture slip, right? As we were interviewing other people in the market, and as Steve alluded to, we decided to lean into the recession. We were, back in 2010, we did hire some great people that are still with us. And, that was a lesson learned. We identified some incredible talent during the downturn that we would not have otherwise had access to. Okay. So, you look for areas of opportunity in a recession. There was amazing talent out there that were looking for a better place to do what they love to do already, right? And as Steve alluded to, it wasn't just the furloughs. Cutting and changing comp plans for the worse, micromanagement, just overbearing management, made people run for the doors. And so we decided we're not gonna let our culture change. Because we're definitely, we're looking forward into the future. We want to hire great people and build for the future. So I would say that's kind of one of the things that I learned during this is to, not to overreact, make your employees feel safe. The other thing that really became apparent was that our words really had meaning, right? Our words really had meaning. I would say something on a Monday morning call, and then I would find out that people heard something differently than I thought I said, right? And that was a really, really big lesson learned for me. I had to be really thoughtful about what I was saying. People were really listening. Maybe they're not listening. We still do those town halls every Monday, and I think people are listening, but people were really listening, okay? And if I said something that they just weren't sure what I meant by it, they started giving it all kinds of meaning that it didn't have. And then I have to go back around and clean it up either with an email or the next Monday and say, guys, here's what I'm hearing. That is not what I said, or no, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to say. Right. And you just had to clean it up. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much people hang on our words and how much meaning they can give our words. And so I got really, really thoughtful about my communication, a little bit of the less is more approach, and make sure that you're not putting anything out there that might be misconstrued or read into, or people get all excited or nervous about, right? So does that kind of cover it?
Yeah, and I do have to say that as a reader, I looked forward to Matt's Corona Chronicles every day. They really helped keep people motivated and inspired. So I thought we could just answer this question. It's from Gary Perkins because it's pertinent to what we're talking about. In downturn situations, how do you, Steve and Matt, whoever wants to go first, plan when the length of the trough is very uncertain?
Well, obviously with COVID, we didn't know how long this was going to last. I actually thought it would last like 6 months, when it turned out. And I knew financially I was okay and I could support, I figured I could support the firm for 1.5 to 2 years without doing anything drastic. Then what happened is getting PPP money really eased that also. Now it's very interesting. Our business really picked up fourth quarter of last year. When companies were hearing about the vaccine, projects in IT that they put off or hiring that they put off. Matt, didn't we have a very solid, wasn't fourth quarter ahead of fourth quarter 2019?
Yeah, we actually had, we had I would say, pretty good Q3, surprisingly, and Q4 was excellent. And I think that, there were enough industries that were hiring, and we had really focused or refocused our efforts. We're an industry agnostic firm, so we were really able to identify the industries that were doing well and kind of pivot away from the ones that were not. But to answer Gary's question, I think, it's all financial executives here. We're all generally fiscally conservative. Steve and I weren't very good accountants, but we were accountants, right? And so I lasted, by the way, I lasted a lot longer than him at Pricewaterhouse. I was at least 1.5 years, at least. So, but the truth is, we kind of come at life in a fiscal conservative way. So I think, see, Steve, I'll use his terminology. He always likes to have a lot of cush. And so, we have incredibly strong relationships with our banks that we've nurtured over the years, right? Relationships are really important, right? It became very important to get in line for the PPP loan. We were one of the first companies that we knew of that actually got the loan. And part of that's because of the great relationship we built with the bank. And, staying in front of things, being very transparent with them, they appreciate it, right? And so they knew where things were. And we really did, I think, an excellent job of cash preservation and just being smart. We also are pretty blessed because we have a variable compensation model, and we don't have a lot of fixed overhead. We have a manufacturing plant and equipment and those sorts of things. And so it's a people-centric business, and your biggest expense is going to be commissions and so forth. And so that tends to go up and down with the business. The other thing that's interesting is because interim resources, what Karen does, is such a big part of our business in addition to search, that actually has a cash flow tail on it, that when your numbers are going down, you actually have pretty good cash flow. It's kind of interesting, people don't realize it, but in the first quarter, we added over 100 consultants, and the cash flow is going out when you're adding consultants and when you're scaling. It's kind of an opposite effect, right? It feels like you're doing well, but there's more money going out the door because you have to wait for the money to come back in. So I think Steve did a phenomenal, he could joke around about his fiscal capabilities, but he has an entrepreneurial mind for cash. He's a back of the napkin cash guy. He really gets it. And I think that some people get lost in their accrual results. And, I really think, sometimes as accountants, we get stuck in the financial statements. He's got a nose for cash. And there's times where the leadership team will get frustrated with him, like, Steve, I don't understand. And he thinks like an owner, right? And so that really, that's something that you probably as a financial executive want to kind of, put yourself, in that, in that owner, again, you may be in private equity, you may be in public company. Private equity firms are certainly focused on cash. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful.
So this past year, as we all know, has been particularly challenging for a number of organizations, just in different ways. And Matt, how would you say your leadership traits manifested during 2020? So
I hope that I didn't change that much, but as far as how they manifested, I would say that, it's kind of like you may have different muscles that you have to flex at different times, right? I feel like I have a naturally compassionate and empathetic leadership style. Generally, I think that's who I am as a person. I feel like I was flexing those muscles more than I've ever flexed them. Being compassionate during the downturn, right, is really important, and listening to people and being empathetic. You never know what somebody's going through. I heard stories I couldn't believe over the last year. But if I didn't ask the question, I wouldn't have known, right? And if you don't create a safe environment where people are willing to talk to you and share with you what they're going through, if you're so focused on their results and you're just beating them over the head, with with the metrics and the hammer of the KPIs, and you're not meeting these numbers, maybe there's something going on that you don't know about. Maybe if you're just willing to listen, you can get under the hood, and maybe be helpful to them. We had, it's funny when I think about my reaction to when the pandemic first hit. There's the fear factor of the business, right? But you're also worried about people's, physical well-being. You're watching the news, people are dying, that whole thing. So you're worried about actually people's health and wellness, their physical health and wellness. What became very apparent to us, and we talked about a lot, was the mental health of your staff, right? People got hit really hard with this. And you didn't know what was happening with their kids at home, being homeschooled. You didn't know what was happening with their ailing parents. You didn't know what's happening with their sibling. You didn't know if somebody in their family got sick, or lost their job or got furloughed. There was a lot of trauma. And so I would say, relationships with our staff, relationships with our external clients became incredibly important too. But I would say relationships with our staff from a culture standpoint became incredibly important. Steve and I divided up the list of employees, and Elizabeth and a couple other folks on our leadership team. And we were doing one-on-one Zoom calls every single day of the week, all around the country, on a very, very regular basis. There were days I would do 3 or 4, Steve would do 5 or 6, where we were just reaching out to people at a desk level who reported to somebody, who reported to somebody, who reported to somebody. And, we would just call them up and see how they were doing and listen to them. And I got to tell you, I actually think our culture improved. If it's possible, I thought we had a great culture before the pandemic hit. The amount of face-to-face, one-on-one contact we have with our leaders in other markets and our staff in other markets that we didn't used to get unless, we would see them on the holiday cruise every year. We fly them all down. We got really good one-on-one intimate time with our team, and face-to-face, not over the phone. We used to do that via cell phone. We're doing it on Zoom, and we really connected with our folks. And I think a lot of people would say that this really brought them closer to the firm, and they feel more connected than ever. That would be my guess. Steve, anything?
Well, one of the things I really see, I've got a lot of old school recruiters who always believed people needed to be in the office and they needed to be around the bullpen, and we needed to create energy, and the energy was going to get everybody motivated. And obviously during COVID, people have been working from home. And I think as a leadership team, we're much more open. We just manage results now as opposed to activity or a lot of noise. And we're, as a firm, much more open to having people be in different locations. Like my New York office just hired a recruiter based in Georgia, and there's somebody else based in North Carolina. And it's like, we never, and by the way, the one in North Carolina is now one of the top recruiters. And we
For
never,
the New York office.
yeah, and we never would have been open to that. And I think as a leadership team, we're really open. And when you think about it, it just opens up the whole country for us to go after talent. They don't have to be sitting in our South Florida office or a New York office or a Minneapolis office.
Yeah, that's all very true. Thank you. I think we'll go to our first poll question. Rosanna, I'll flip it back to you.
Terrific. Thank you, Karen. All right, I'm going to launch our first poll here. Did you lead your organization and/or team differently during COVID? Yes, no, minor modifications, or not applicable. I'll give everybody a few seconds here to answer it, and then I'll share the poll.
Now, am I going to get my CPE credits? Because I'm thinking about going back into the profession.
I'd be happy to do that for you, Matt.
How does that work when your CPA has been lapsed for like 23 years? Is there somebody give me some clarity on that?
That's beyond my knowledge base right there, buddy.
You just need 120 hours.
Oh, I'm in. I'm in.
There we go.
All right, good.
All right, it looks like
I'm going to go to the SPAC session next.
that's going to be an interesting one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results here.
Oh, interesting. So 72% said yes, they did lead their organization or team differently during COVID. So that's a very interesting, Matt or Steve, I don't know if you have anything to comment on that, but that's an interesting poll.
I'm actually surprised by the 11% that didn't do anything differently, in the regard that, you know, since we all got, you know, detained in our homes, we actually had to figure out different ways to lead and manage. You know, we've always had a lot of remote folks in some of the kind of the smaller markets that we serve. But just very, very different mindset around leading people that are not physically in the same place. That's the biggest thing we had to change.
Yeah. Matt, as you think about your priorities for 2020, you've talked about them throughout, but what would you say were maybe your top 2 priorities during 2020?
So top 2 priorities going into the year, or after we got hit with the pandemic?
After we got hit with the pandemic.
Yeah. I think, you know, at first it was just, you know, Steve likes to say, as a leader, you need to be like the immovable redwood in the forest, right? Like when the wind blows really hard, you're not going to get knocked over. You know, I felt like we had to be the steady, stable force, right? You know, if people saw me nervous, right, and concerned, they were going to get nervous and concerned, right? And so I felt like we just needed to be really steady and really consistent. And so you know, the initial plan was, you know, how do we get to the other side, right? I mean, that's, you know, we don't know how long this is going to be. How are we going to ride this out, and how are we going to make the best of it? And where are the pockets of opportunity? Where can we redirect people's efforts? Where do we need to retrain people or retool people? You know, we were in a market for a long time, and probably a lot of, I don't know the context of the different businesses people on the call are in. You know, we were in a market that was just booming, to where there was so much work coming in consistently all the time that, you know, a lot of our recruiters were really just in delivery mode for forever. They were just taking orders left and right, and they were just, you know, they always had a full plate of work, and they didn't really have to go out and prospect and develop business. And I actually think there was some atrophy in their sales muscles. You know, I talked about building up your different muscles. There was atrophy. There were some folks that they forgot, you know, what it was like to actually have to go out and develop business on a regular basis, because the business was just coming in consistently without them really even trying. And so I would say we had to refocus people on kind of that core, you know, hunting, you know, salesmanship approach. We had to really get everybody. We kept saying, you know, everybody's got to row the boat right now, right? You don't get to sit in the back of the boat while a handful of people bring in business for everybody. Everybody's got to bring in business right now, right? And so we actually redirected everybody's activity and focus to, you know, driving openings, so the firm could you know, keep things going to get to the other side, whatever that looked like, right? We actually quickly shifted, though. I'll tell you, when we saw things start to turn, and again, our biggest market is Florida. We have 6 offices there, but we're across the U.S. We're in Canada. We're in Latin America. I would say that as soon as we saw things really start to shift, and you guys would be surprised, but our New York office was the only office. New York was closed for the entire year. It was the only office that actually beat their original 2020 goals for growth. And you know, what we found was there were companies still hiring. We just needed to do the hard work of figuring out who they were, and we had to position ourselves. And this is the part where, you know, relationships become incredibly important, right? You know, we had to really leverage our, you know, long-term relationships in the marketplace to be the firm that got the opportunity to you know, do the searches or get those, consulting opportunities or interim opportunities. And so I thought we did a pretty good job of refocusing people's efforts, so they were working smarter. The other thing was, when we found an industry that was hiring, we told everybody, that went out in the morning memo, right? Here's 3 more industries that are hiring. Like, let's go get it, guys. And so I think we did a pretty good job there. Trying to think about if there was any other. Yeah, so I think it shifted from preservation and survival, right, to, wow, how do we take advantage of this? And Steve really nailed it. I mean, we leaned into this. I mean, we got really aggressive in Q3, Q4 hiring. When times are good in any industry, it's hard to find great salespeople, great, relationship management people, great leaders. It's just hard. When times are really good, everybody's making a ton of money, everybody's being treated really well. But I think a lot of the folks that we hired, they got to see the true sides of the companies they were working for and what they really stood for and what they really cared about, right? Our employees got to see that we really cared about them. And I think that was a difference. And so what happened was we actually wound up with a lot of folks following people that they used to work with in another firm. We hired 1 person out of a firm and then 4 came with them. And we had that happen multiple times. And we have groups of 3 and 4 and 5 people that came over from one firm. Once one person heard how we were treating our employees during the pandemic, they were like, holy moly, we want to work there. And so I would say, focusing on your culture and what you actually have to offer folks, what kind of environment are you creating? What are people experiencing? Because I will tell you, and we'll get to this later in the discussion, is if you're not treating your people well when times are bad and you're not making them feel appreciated and safe, as soon as things turn, they're going to be out the door. They have 1 foot on a banana peel.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's also very true. Let's go to our next poll question.
Hey, Aaron, can I just add one thing?
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
I really thought the most important trait I had to bring forward during this whole thing was just reassuring everybody. Just reassurance. Whether it's right or wrong, I knew at the end of the day, we were still going to be a viable organization. And I had to tell people, okay, you're going to make less money this year. Duh, you're going to make less money this year. But our firm's going to survive. And it was that reassurance. And I really did believe that. I wasn't as concerned this pandemic as I was in 2009 personally. What I had to deal though was people were really afraid. My recruiters were really afraid and it was palpable. And it's like, we just constantly had to tell them the firm's going to be fine. Yes, you're going to make less money this year and we're going to come out of this fine. So that was really what I just kept doing.
Which was great. Thank you. Let's go to our next poll question, Roseanne.
Certainly. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. How do you feel the culture of your organization was impacted during COVID? Changed for the better, changed for the worse, no impact, or not sure? So Steve and Matt, while they are answering this real quick, do you feel like your company meetings and those one-on-one conversations are going to continue? Do you think that will be something you bring forward as you continue?
Well, what's interesting now, a lot of my recruiters are doing well, and some of them still aren't doing as well as they hope to. And I've been spending a lot of time with those people, just reminding them that they used to be great. They didn't lose that. That they may be in a certain market that's a little behind Florida and New York or some other people. So I'm still spending a lot of time building up people's confidence. And I'm spending time with high performers, just pulling them up and congratulating them. So I think that's going to continue for me. And I know Matt does the same thing.
Well, this is interesting. So the results are really interesting. 25% change for the better and then 38% change for the worse. So that's interesting too. I'm sure we could get into a really compelling discussion about that. So the not sure is interesting because I think that I don't know if people who weren't sure has anything to do with being in a remote environment and not being able to feel that touchy-feely connection with your employees. Interesting. Very interesting. Matt and Steve, I'd like to just see if going through what we went through, like, which is something that we have never been through before, what were your fears or concerns as a leader? And how, speaking from a culture perspective, because we do have a very rich culture, and you were able to maintain it, and I think and continue to grow it during the pandemic. But how did you and other leaders maintain the culture and continue to focus on that?
Well, Matt, I'll let you take the second part, but my big fear in the beginning was how long was this going to last? And also, how was I getting accurate information? I really, if you notice, there was a lot of conflicting information in the beginning. And so what information could I trust? But the biggest thing was the staff. A lot of them were just frantic. And it's like, my big fear was, were they going to do something short term, like just quit the industry? I was worried that people would just say, oh, this is horrible, this is going to last, I'm getting out of the field. Now, that never happened to any of us, but I was concerned about that. Matt?
Yeah, I actually see a question from Anita I might jump into, asking if there were new pathways for growth. I mean, this concept of remote work, Steve alluded to it, wound up turning into just such a great opportunity for us, Anita. This woman we hired in Raleigh, who's always worked in New York market and was working for a firm that was not willing to let her move. Basically, you're going to lose your job unless you stay here in New York. We wouldn't have had access to. She had worked with a couple of our employees at a prior company, and she reached out to them specifically to see if we'd be open to letting her work the New York market, which she loves, but from Raleigh. And that was the differentiating factor to have an opportunity to hire somebody great like that. And if I tell you, she's an absolute rock star. I mean, a rock star, one of the best recruiters we've ever hired. And and that led to us 2 months later now hiring somebody from the New York team in Georgia, just because of mindset shift. Who, by the way, worked at that same company, and people are hearing that, hey, there's another way to do this, and they've heard great things about the environment. So I think for us, we deal a lot with private equity. We used to have to fly around the country to go to meetings, and I'd have to fly to New York to meet with the private equity team, and then fly to the portfolio company to meet with the executive team. This Zoom phenomenon has accelerated our ability to drive business across the country in just an incredible fashion. I literally can have meetings in one day with a private equity firm in London, another one in Toronto, one in San Francisco, and one in Dallas, literally in the same day. And the best part is they'll actually invite the CEO of the portfolio company to the call who's sitting in another city. And we can make a lot of progress. And I can pull somebody from my Boston office or my Chicago office or wherever into that call. So here I have this incredible opportunity now where we're saving money, we're saving time, right? We're becoming incredibly efficient. We're actually able to get face to face with those decision makers all at once. It used to be hard. You'd have like separate meetings with the private equity firm, separate meetings with the portfolio company. Now it's all happening real time together. And instead of taking 3 weeks to plan a meeting where we're going to fly out 3 weeks from Tuesday when everybody's going to be in the same place, it's literally like, how's tomorrow at 4 o'clock, right? And next thing you know, we have a proposal out the day after that, and we're getting hired. By that Friday, they're signing a contract. And so I would say the acceleration of the ability to get in front of customers. And then the local example is really interesting. We sit in Fort Lauderdale, and we have Miami office, we have tons of clients in Miami, but we have tons of clients in Palm Beach. I literally can meet with clients in Miami and Palm Beach the same day. But we used to lose a lot of time, to drive to Miami, find parking, go meet the client, get back to the car, get back to the office. I mean, you literally would lose, and especially if you were taking them to lunch, it could be a 4-hour proposition to go on one lunch. How many Zoom meetings I can have in 4 hours? And I can meet with that same client just as effectively and really bond with them and connect with them. So anyway, I've actually, I've seen this as an acceleration opportunity for us to do things different, better, more efficiently. We have felt it. Our Q1 was the best quarter we've ever had in 37 years in business. It is incredible what's happening right now. But there's some accelerators in there. So Greg, thank you for the question, Anita.
Yeah.
But if I could just add, one of the benefits of how we treated our employees during this COVID, right? In terms of nobody got fired, nobody got cut, and we were actually hiring in the middle of it. Our staff told their friends at other firms. So we've been getting people calling us. It's like, wait a minute, my company, we don't have no idea what's going on. You're communicating every day. They lowered our comp plan. They cut my draw 20%, and you guys didn't do any of that. I want to hear more about this. So we're getting these people just approaching us that I don't think ever would have approached us pre-COVID, more given what we've been doing.
Yep. And a real example is we're about to announce this week a new national office, and the individual opening our national office that we hired out of another retained firm worked with Don, who's out of our Westchester, New York office. They were colleagues at a prior firm, and he reached out to Don, and Don made the introduction, and now we've opened a Nashville market, right? And again, all based on kind of how we handle things versus how we handle things, right?
Yes, thank you both. We could go on and on. The leadership lessons are so rich. I think in the time we have left, it would be great for us to talk about your insights about attracting and retaining talent. And with Florida being a couple months ahead of Minnesota in terms of opening the economy and staying open, what hiring trends did you see initially and now after a couple months?
Yeah, I guess my advice to all of you, since you may not be in businesses that have taken off yet. Again, I don't know anybody, so I don't know where your businesses are in the continuum of kind of the rebound. Get ready. Get ready, or as Steve would say, saddle up. The pace at which the market turned in Florida when things started opening up, and the acceleration in the job market and the amount of openings and the amount of hiring that's gone on. And we also happen to have a lot of migration of companies right now every other day. But if you think about it, the amount of liquidities that's in the market, just anticipate what's going to happen, right? There's a ton of private equity money raised that needs to get deployed. There's 500 new SPACs that have raised a ton of money. They have to buy something with it, or they're going to have to, give that money back, right? And lots of industries have turned. And so, look at the earnings reports that are coming out this week. It's unbelievable. When you start looking at the performance, a lot of these quarter-over-quarter, first quarter numbers, March of last year was really 2 bad weeks, right? But most of the first quarter was good last year, right? So when you look at the earnings reports right now, they're really stellar. So I would tell you, just get ready. What we're seeing right now, and really relevant to this group, the two areas where it's the hardest to fill positions right now and the hardest to retain your staff are accounting, finance, and IT. Without a doubt, they accelerated the fastest. I would tell you that there's major issues right now in retaining talent, and there's major issues in trying to hire people. The companies that cut really hard and cut into some muscle, and now they're trying to build those teams back up, they're finding that it's way harder than they thought to replace those people they let go. And they're paying a lot more money than they were paying the people that they let go. So again, the knee-jerk reaction really cost them because it's taking a long time to fill the position. And they're putting out an offer to somebody who's got 3, 4, 5 other offers. I mean, you're trying to hire an accounting manager, a senior financial analyst, like mid-level professionals that make your teams run. Try hiring developers right now or project managers. They literally, as soon as they put their resume on the market, they're 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, they have multiple offers. And then they're getting crazy counter offers, which are pushing the compensation levels up even further. So there's some internal equity issues that are happening right now because, the people that stayed are making X. So say they're all, people at a certain level are making 70, 80K. Well, now rehiring those same positions because the market got so good so fast, they're having to pay $95,000 to hire the same position. Well, now you got to look at, hey, if any of my staff find out, right, they're going to be out the door, they're going to be knocking on my door. So there's some real challenges with kind of the wage inflation that's happening, because there are way more openings than there are qualified people for the jobs in Florida right now. So the other part I'll just add to that is, you know, I left Pricewaterhouse 25 years ago to get into search. I can't remember before now, you know, companies being really willing to be flexible about having certain positions not be in the office in the same city. If you're not willing to be open and flexible about the idea that you might have to make certain roles in certain departments where you're willing to hire people remotely for those jobs, then you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage all of a sudden. You know, I will tell you, you know, we just hired a recruiter here in South Florida that, you know, young children, spouse works, and, you know, the commute to the office was going to be an hour, and they basically said, I can come to the office, but only 2 to 3 days a week. And if it has to be 5 days a week, it's a non-starter for me. You know, this is a guy we wanted to hire. So we struck a deal with him, come in 2 to 3 days a week, work from home the other couple days, and we have a deal. And you know, we wouldn't do that a year and a half ago. We never would have done that. We would have said, you know, look, you know where the office is, right? And we expect you to be there. And so I think you guys need to be ready to start being flexible and think about, you know, what jobs might be able to be successful in your environment remotely. And I think a lot of companies are doing it very successfully.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, the only thing I can add is and reinforces what Matt said. Comp has gone up a little bit now in accounting and IT. And I get good intelligence from recruiters or your peers to really find out what you're going to have to pay. Because if you start making low ball offers, you're just going to lose these people. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you really got to move fast right now. Yep. You got to move fast.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Good
Very
advice.
True.
And last part is run an inspiring process, right? So, you know, this idea that you're just going to vet somebody and beat them up about their technical skills and have them want to join your company at the end of the interview, those days are gone. You need to have the right people in your interview schedule that are going to inspire them about the company and the culture and the opportunity. Clearly, you need to vet them for the right skill set. But I would say, you know, leave time to let them ask questions, answer their questions, you know, inspire them about what's possible if they join your company. You want them, even if you decide not to hire them, you want them getting in the car, driving home, or hanging up the Zoom call and going in the other room and saying, oh my gosh, I want this job, right? Whether you hire them or not, because there are a lot of circumstances where they call up and they say, hey, great news, we want to hire them. And we're like, yeah, well, the other 3 companies made them excited to work there, and you guys like just beat them up the whole time. And, you know, they did. Oh, and by the way, one of the people on the interview schedule complained about the culture. So you might want to think about not having them in the interview next time, because they don't seem very happy, and they left the candidate thinking that they didn't want to work there. So.
Yes, thank you. Let's go to our third poll. We have to get to of men, so we'll go to our third poll next.
Great, thank you, Karen. So for 2021, will hiring in your organization increase, decrease, stay the same, or not sure? And we have about 4 minutes left. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask. And maybe Karen, maybe one more question. And we'll
sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and.
Okay, I can share the results here first.
Okay.
All right, there you go. You need to share them first. There you go.
Okay, so again, it's really interesting to look at the trends. So almost 50% said that your hiring will increase. So I think it's interesting lessons learned from our friends in Florida, because I think moving quickly on top talent is really key. I think what we'll do is should we do the final poll? We have one more poll, and then we can open up for questions, or?
Sure. Yep, I can do that. So I just shut it here.
So Matt, I think as we're doing the final poll, maybe you could comment on anything as far as opportunities and challenges you and others have experienced with attracting and retaining talent. You kind of post-COVID, you already talked about it, but if there's anything else either you or Steve would like to add, would be great as far as tips for your northern friends who will be seeing this talent boom soon, hopefully.
Yeah, again, not knowing the context of the people on the call and the level that they're at, I think, executive retained search hiring is a little different, right, than building out that kind of middle management muscle in your organization, right? Well, we call professional search, and we do contingent search as well as retained executive search, and Chad can be very helpful with you guys there. I think that whether you're trying to hire somebody into the executive leadership team or you're trying to hire someone in middle management, you got to really, you got to look at who's in the interview process. You got to look at, what's a short-term and long-term opportunity, assume this person's going to have multiple opportunities and multiple offers. I'd probably start your process, by the way, sooner rather than later. If you're thinking that, hey, I want to hire somebody for, Q3, you might just get ahead of the curve, because, the way I look at it is if you wait till everybody's hiring, it's going to be harder. Right. So, if you get a little ahead of the market, even if you have to pay an extra salary for an extra 30 or 45 days, you may just beat everybody else to the punch and hire some of the best talent before the market gets really hard again. Because I'm telling you, it's coming, and it hit so fast and furious here. And by the way, New York just announced last night that they're going to open up offices 75%. The companies that are waiting till now in New York to hire are going to have a much harder time than the companies who are proactive and started 60 days ago. And they're at the tail end of their cycle now. So I would say start a little earlier than you plan. But as Steve said, be prepared to move quickly. You cannot wait and see five more of the same candidate to decide, whether you want them, because candidate number one, candidate number two are going to get 3 offers. They're going to be gone, and then you're going to be regretting the fact that you didn't take action. So I would say run an efficient process. Be ready to make a decision. Be inspiring in your approach to the process. And I would definitely look at who's in the interview schedule. We're hearing more than ever, if you have disenchanted people or disengaged people in your interview process, they will kill off a great candidate. You as the leader are so excited about this person, and you get to that offer phase and they turn you down and you're like, what happened? Well, you don't realize that, there was somebody in the middle of the interview process that just like threw a wet blanket over the opportunity and what it's like to work there. And it could just be that they're not doing well, or they're having a bad experience personally. It doesn't mean it's not a great opportunity for someone else. So think about who's in that process with you.
Well, thank you, Matt, so much. And thank you, Steve, very much for your insights and for your time. It was great for me to listen to you again, and I'm sure for everyone else too. And thank you everyone for getting up so early and joining us. Turn it back to Roseanne, because we're on.
Right. Yes, thank you so much, you guys. Steve, Matt, thank you so much for being here. Karen, thank you for moderating. Really appreciate it.